Hi children, welcome to the class. Today we'll start with History Chapter 3, the Delhi Sultans. Today's topics are the dynasties, the sources and expansion of empire. Children, please take your history textbook, Chapter 3, the Delhi Sultans. You all heard the name Delhi Sultans several times, yes? Now, in this chapter we will learn about the different dynasties that ruled from Delhi, how Delhi became an important commercial center, what are the different sources through which we get information about these sultans, and how the empire expanded from a garrison town to an empire. So prior to 12th century, Delhi was not the capital of any region of the subcontinent. It was mainly ruled from Kaveri Delta region. In the midst of 12th century, there were Tomara Rajput and the Chauhans who made Delhi as their capital. So Tomara Rajput dynasties were defeated by In the 12th century, Tomara Rajput made Delhi as the capital, and they were defeated by the Chauhans. That they became Chauhans of Ajmer. Now, Delhi became an important commercial center during this time. This is because very rich Jaina merchants were living in the city, and they made several temples in the region. There were also coins minted in the region. They were known as Delhi Wall. Children, please take page number 30. First paragraph. Underline, Delhi first became the capital of a kingdom under Tomara Rajputs, who were defeated in the middle of 12th century by the Chauhans of Ajmer. It was under Tomaras and Chauhans, Delhi became an important commercial center. Commercial center means trading center. Now, very rich Jaina merchants lived in the city, and they constructed several temples. Underline till there. Now, Delhi became a capital of vast area of the subcontinent by the 13th century, when Muslim rulers started ruling from there. There were so many dynasties under them that we are going to study now. These Delhi Sultans, they made several cities in the region. These cities you can see in the box in the map given here. They were Siri, Janpana, then Delhi Kuna. Do underline, please do underline. The Delhi Sultans built many cities such as Delhi Kuna, Siri and Janpana. Underline. Now coming to the next page, page number 31, the rulers of Delhi. The rulers of Delhi, when you look at, we already studied, now in the first page we learned that there were Tomara Rajputs and Chauhans. So please underline Rajput dynasties first, Rajput dynasties, Tomaras, then Chauhan, Prithviraj Chauhan was an important ruler. Then early Turkish rulers, Iltutmish was a famous ruler. Underline. Razia was also a very able female ruler. Then comes Khalji dynasty. Underline, Alauddin Khalji was a very prominent ruler. Then Tughlaq dynasty. Underline Muhammad Tughlaq's name. Said dynasty and Lodi dynasty. So the main dynasties that ruled from Delhi were Rajput dynasty, early Turkish rulers, Khalji dynasty, Tughlaq dynasty, Said dynasty and Lodi dynasty. Now, what are the sources to learn about these rulers? We already studied that. We learned history through sources. The different sources we studied in class 6, you remember? Yes, architecture, then inscriptions or manuscripts, then coins. All these are the different sources through which we learn about history. So one more here famous was Tariq or Tawarik written in Persian language. Tariq or Tawarik written in the Persian language. This was written by the learned men like secretaries, administrators, poets and courtiers. Children, take page number 32. Finding out about the Delhi Sultans. Finding out about the Delhi Sultans. Underline the sources. You can write over the sources. Beside that paragraph, write the sources. First one is inscriptions. Second, coins. Third, architecture. and fourth one is Tariq or Tawarik. Tariq is a plural form, Tawarik is the plural form, Tariq is a singular form. This is written in Persian language by the people who were mainly learned men. Underline that also. The authors of Tawarik were learned men such as secretaries, administrators, poets and courtiers who recounted the events and advised the king on just rule. Just rule means how to govern the country. This was advised by these courtiers, poets or those who wrote Tawarik or Tariq. Now here you can see a box showing circle of justice. Now what is circle of justice means? It is very important. Beside that box you write down important. Now circle of justice means a king cannot survive without soldiers. You all know soldiers are required for going for war. To protect the country, soldiers are needed. So soldiers won't work like that. They need what? Salaries. Soldiers need salaries. The salaries, they cannot live without salaries. So write down, underline this. So a king cannot survive without soldiers, and soldiers cannot live without salaries. Now from where do these people get salaries from? Kings get salaries from salaries for soldiers. How will they pay? From the revenue collected from the peasants. Peasants are those who are working in this the cultivation, okay. They 50% of the tax is collected, 50% of the revenue is collected as taxes. These taxes are paid as salaries to the soldiers. But peasants, if they want to pay tax to government, they have to be what? They should be prosperous. They are prosperous. This happens when the king promotes justice. This happens when the king promotes just rule. Now, these Tawarik, one more important thing we have to notice here is the Tawariks, they are people who are living in cities. Tawariks are people who are living in the cities. Now, they are living along with the kings and they don't have any idea of what is happening in the villages. So, they mainly wrote about three things you can see here, page number 33. The authors of Tawarik lived in cities, underline, and they hardly ever into villages. That means they don't have any idea of what the village life is or what peasants are, what type of life the peasants have. Now second point, they often wrote for king in hope of the rich rewards. They always write about the king in the hope of rich rewards. Then these authors advised rulers on the need to preserve an ideal social order. So here ideal social order means in those times the people are discriminated on the basis of their gender. So female are considered as inferior to men. Okay, so women are considered as inferior to men and women were not given that kind of right. It is, they say that it is against the God's will if you give important positions to women. Even the chroniclers also say that if you are giving more importance to women, that is against the God's will. Then third point is these authors advise the rulers on the need to preserve an ideal social order based on birthright and gender distinctions. Here you can see two boxes here. Two boxes are given, the birthright and gender distinctions. Birthright means privileges claimed on account of birth. That means nobles were considered as those who are born in certain families. They have their rights to govern. So the nobles are people, they are born in a particular family. That means they have the rights to govern. That means there were distinction on the basis of birth and on the basis of gender. Gender means male or female. So women were considered as inferior to men. So here even the chroniclers say about this. For example, you can see in the paragraph, next paragraph you can see the story of Razia Sultan. In 1236, Sultan Iltutmish's daughter Razia became Sultan. Now, the chronicler of the age, Minhaj-i-Siraj, recognized that she was more able and qualified than her brothers. But he was not comfortable at having a queen as a ruler. So, nobody will allow a woman as a ruler. Why? Because that time, according to the idea of social just order, people are discriminated on the basis of gender. On the basis of gender. Now, even the chroniclers, the reporters, those who write about these events, they also say that this is against God's will, and she was dethroned by 1240. Only 4 years she became the queen, and she was dethroned by 1240. Underline this paragraph and write as an example for what ideal social order. So, page number 33, first you have to underline how the authors of Tawarik were writing about the Tawarik, or the informations they wrote is mainly about the king and in the hope of rich rewards, and they also advise the king on the basis of ideal social order. Underline ideal social order. This means on the it is based on birthright and gender distinctions. Example is Razia Sultans story, you can write down as an example. Here what Minhaj-i-Siraj thought about Razia, one box is given, read that now. Minhaj-i-Siraj thought that the king's rule went against the ideal social order. So, according to ideal social order, women are considered as inferior to men. So, if a queen is ruling means what? This is going against the ideal social order, and it is against the God's will, in which women were supposed to be subordinate to men. So, according to the ideal social order created by God, women were supposed to be subordinate to men. Underline that. He therefore asked in the register of God's creation, since her account did not fall under the column of men, how did she gain from all of her excellent qualities? So, that means even though she is so able to rule the country, she was not given the right to rule just because she is a female. She don't have any right to rule the country according to the ideal social order created by God. So, ideal social order means it depends on two factors, birthright and gender distinctions. So, Razia as a woman, she is not supposed to rule the country. Now, next topic is from garrison town to empire. So, I think this is clear to you. Ideal social order means it is based on birthright and gender distinctions. You can give the example of Razia Sultan's story. Next one is from garrison town to empire. So, earlier the Delhi Sultans were controlling the subcontinent. They vast areas from garrison towns only. Garrison town means fortified buildings, settlements which is made for soldiers to live. So, soldiers are required for a king to go for war, and all soldiers are required. So, king and the soldiers was used to live in the garrison towns, and they were supplied goods and services from the hinterland. Hinterland means the adjacent cities near to this garrison towns. So, the king rarely go beyond the garrison town to take things. Only the soldiers were sent to get what all things for trade, tribute and plunder. They only sent soldiers. So, there were three factors why this was happening: because of rebellion, war and bad weather, which snapped the fragile communication of the routes. Now, page number 34. Take from garrison town to empire. From garrison town to empire, the expansion of the Delhi Sultanate, how the expansion occurred. Children, page number 34, underline the first sentence. The Sultans rarely went beyond the heavily fortified towns occupied by garrisons. The Sultans seldom controlled the hinterland of the cities and were therefore dependent upon trade, tribute or plunder for supplies. So, the Sultans rarely go beyond the fortified towns to control whom? The hinterlands. So, hinterlands, there were local rulers. So Sultans never went and controlled. They only depended upon trade, tribute. Tribute means what? Last year we studied. Tribute means whenever a trader go through a particular route, he has to pay certain amount, 25% of whatever he is carrying to the king. So trade, tribute and plunder for supplies. Now controlling garrison town was difficult for the king due to three factors it is given there. Rebellion, underline point number 1, rebellion. Second one, war, and third, fragile communication routes. Now Delhi started expansion. The rulers of this Delhi Sultans under Ghiyasuddin Balban, Alauddin Khalji and Muhammad Tughlaq, they started expansion in two ways. Two sets of campaigns were formed to expansion. For the expansion of Delhi Sultans, two sets of campaigns were formed. First one is internal frontier and second is the external frontier. Now internal frontier means they started consolidating the hinterlands. They started capturing the hinterlands together. For this, first they have to deforest the area, and the hunter-gatherers and pastoralists were thrown out from the region. So they cleared the forest. The Delhi Sultans cleared the forest and the area was given for agriculture. The area was given for agriculture. That means cultivation of the field. What is the benefit of that? Then people will start settling over the region. So underline the first set of campaigns, page number 34. The first set of campaigns along the internal frontier of the Sultanate aimed at consolidating the hinterlands of the garrison towns. So first they started consolidating the hinterlands of the garrison town. For this, what they have done during this time, the Ganga Yamuna Doab was cleared. All this region was cleared, and hunter-gatherers and pastoralists expelled from their habitat. Hunter-gatherers, those who are living in the forest, and the pastoralists, the cattle rearers, all these people were thrown out from their habitat. Now these lands were given to peasants. Underline all this sentence. These lands were given to peasants and agriculture was encouraged. So the Sultans ordered the people to stay over in this area, settle in this regions and encourage what? Agriculture, cultivation of land. New fortress, garrison towns and towns were established. New fortress, new forts were built over the region. Garrison towns for whom the soldiers were built, and towns are mainly for trading, were established to protect trade routes and to promote regional trade. So internal frontiers include clearing of the forest first, then agriculture was encouraged, people started settling in the region, they also built fortress, then garrison towns and towns were built in order to promote regional trade and to protect trade routes. So internal frontiers, close the bracket there. Second one is external frontier. External frontier means what? The king, the rulers of sultans, they started going out of the region, out of their area, and they started what? Conquering the other lands. So here you have to underline, military expeditions into southern India started during the reign of Alauddin Khalji, underline, and culminated means came into the peak with Muhammad Tughlaq's time. So during the Alauddin Khalji's reign, they started what? Military expeditions. For armies were sent to other lands of southern India and they started conquering these lands. They captured elephants, horses and slaves and carried away with precious things. Clear? So internal frontiers means inside the region, and external means they started going out of the region and started conquering southern India. This started with Alauddin Khalji and it came into the peak by the Muhammad Tughlaq's time. So by the end of Muhammad Tughlaq's reign, 150 years after somewhat humble beginning, the armies of the Delhi Sultanate has marched across a large part of the subcontinent. So, they expanded to a larger area of southern India also. They had defeated rival armies and seized cities. They started defeating the rival armies and started capturing the cities. The Sultanate collected taxes from the peasantry and dispensed justice in its realm. So, they started collecting taxes from the people, from the areas they have conquered, and they started also what? Just rule. So, children, today we will stop here. This is the first portion. Do underline the important points, read twice the chapter. Here one more picture is given in page number 32, how the manuscripts were prepared. You can see that preparing the paper, writing the text, melting gold, preparing the binding. You can see this picture. This is about the first video. Please do underline the important points. Thank you, children. Have a nice day.